Here we go, record. First and foremost, we want to welcome you to episode 2 of Mancave Classified.
Yes.
Where classified information gets spoken about. That's kind of a horrible opener. Sorry.
That's all right.
So we'll work it out maybe by the 10th one. But Carmel and I are longtime friends, and I run what I would call a business / ministry called HISaDvocates. We do promotional work on helping Americans become American again as state citizens. Carmel actually got interested in that about 6 years ago, and we reunited. For me, it's about helping people move into the private and so on and so forth. It truly is a ministry, and that kind of promoted our first episode and dialogue of Mancave Classified, where I believe we're going to be discussing elements of helping men become men again and discussing elements of truth from a couple of different, we have very different opinions, but we laugh, we have a lot of fun.
Yes, sir.
There's no animosity here, and you're getting two very different views. Carmel's a professional comedian. He's hilarious. And he's a word man. He's a wordsmith, and we have a lot of fun with that. So Carmel, you have the floor.
Wow. Thank you for that introduction. I feel like I'm on stage now. I haven't been on stage in a minute, actually, since last year. I miss it. This is actually a good place for me to. What's that?
It's been a year.
No, I take that back. I did an open mic about 6 months ago just to shake some rust off. I miss it. So this is actually a good place to kind of stretch my wings a little bit and talk about some stuff that I would just talk on stage about. So the first thing I definitely want to talk about is this 7th or 8th train derailment.
Just had one today.
Yeah, I think this was in North Carolina.
Right. And food processing plants burning down and
right. And I don't think it's a coincidence. Like all of these accidents have hazardous materials and waste involved. Like why couldn't some of these trains just be holding like rice? Like what, or just like iPhones? It's gonna be like,
I don't know a whole lot about this subject matter. We talked about 20 minutes ago, and we talked about what we were going to say on this. And I told you I don't know a whole lot about the subject matter, but I do know they're creating cities, and I'm not again sure about the terms and terminology. This is for Agenda 21, Agenda 30, to push people out of the suburbs and into these cities so that they can confine people and get people used to being in and around each other, and that way they're more easily able to manage them and watch them. And it's funny that the world, in my opinion, like the movies and different things, and I just saw another movie this weekend, Ant-Man, and this whole multiverse, and that's a whole nother dialogue. But it's funny how these movies are not just foretelling the future, they're basically promoting the truth of what they're trying to attempt to do. And so I want to touch on that just a little bit. The one movie that had called The Hunger Games, it had 12 districts, and the 13th district was the capital. Mm-hmm. And literally in this nation, in the United States of America, we have 12 districts, and the 13th district is literally the capital, known as the District of Columbia. So, and the whole promotion of the video is to get everybody to fight each other and to get everybody out of these densely populated forests with life and with, and put them in these manageable compounds where they're able to keep a close eye on them. And that's literally what has been going on in this nation. And it's a well-written plan, Agenda 21. It's a well-written plan signed on by 170 some odd countries, all promoting and bringing forth this new world order. And so, I don't know what the promotion is going to be, but it's 3 years ago we had Event 201, and that's where John Hopkins and the Gates Foundation and everybody, they had a mock event of COVID. They basically said this is what could happen and this is how it needs to roll out, and that was done in November, 1 month before the virus release, 3 months before the lockdowns. And Now, we just had another similar event, again, by the same organizations, talking about another description of what they're going to do. And these are the things, what you're looking at are the things, in my opinion. I'm not going to isolate what's going on in Ohio, what's going on in Florida. But these are the things that are going to promote people, because for their safety, and these are the coin things, when somebody says this is for public safety, run.
So that's another thing, is the predictive programming we're seeing through movies, through television. There was a movie came out called White Noise that literally is the exact description of what happened in Ohio, a train wreck in Ohio, in a small town. So it's like, it's funny because when we tell people about things, like you and I, we feel like we share knowledge with people and they look at us crazy. But then when you start seeing it and they're like, wait a minute, this is literally the things we talked about. Even like movies like Contagion and Outbreak, these are all like predictive programming to get us used to something happening.
There's
when you
been
see it, you're like,
a lot of TV shows, Carmel, that absolutely had an episode in 2005 about COVID and what was going to happen. And it even got down to the spike proteins. It even got down to all these things that we're dealing with today as a result of COVID and or. So it's just interesting. It's they're telling us, and there's a terminology that's used for this, and I'm not sure what it's called. Obviously, in their opinion, if the sheep are too dumb to learn from what they're disclosing, and that's really what a movie is. And people, I don't know if people know this, but the CIA has been controlling the content of what goes on in theaters and what goes on in TV for 60, 70 years now. And when you wrap your mind, and it actually started around World War II, when you wrap your mind around the programming that was being done on these movies to get these GIs to want to fight in a war, it's no different than what we're dealing with today. We're dealing with programming, which is going to lead us into, and this is the scariest stuff. We don't need to do it on this episode, but Chat GBT, the chat bot, the amazing things that it's able to do as an AI engine. And those things are blowing my mind because, in my opinion, we've created the beast. And in my opinion, I'm not saying there isn't a antichrist, there isn't a quote unquote devil, and you may or may not agree, and we're not going to go there today, hopefully. But in my opinion, the beast system, that beast structure, the mark of the man biblically is the mark of the beast is the mark of man biblically. And so I always kind of resonated and thought about that and thought that through. And I'm like, holy crud. So every move that they're making towards the new world order, towards a biblical fulfillment, or towards an outcome where they're in total control is taking place. And I got to step outside the box and I got to think to myself, how do you beat AI thinking wise? How do you because some of the things that this chat bot is doing is blowing people's minds. It literally, you're telling it your problem that it needs to do. It needs to create a website with a cover page. It needs to have this information pertaining to this stuff. And I need you to write the programming and I need you to write the code. And in 3 seconds later, it gives it all to you.
Yeah. How do you beat it? I don't know. I mean, so it's funny because we've had so many, again, if you look at movies, there was a movie AI that came out in 2001. Do you know who originally did that movie? So it's a Steven Spielberg movie, but before Steven Spielberg had it, do you know who's actually going to produce this movie? Stanley Kubrick. Very interesting. So again, when we talk about getting people to think about a certain thing a certain way, we can.
What's interesting is how that guy died.
Yeah.
In what movie?
What movie did he die in?
During what movie? Eyes Wide Shut, when he's disclosing the secret societies. Right. And what they do. That blew my mind.
Yeah. So he died in 99. AI came out in 2001. Again, now this guy was known for a lot of interesting movies. We can have the moon landing talk some other time, but it's about getting the people to think a certain thing in a certain way. I started watching a series called Last of Us. Are you familiar with it now? It's about zombies. I mean, hundreds of zombie apocalyptic movies in series. It's a good show, and I watch it just for the writing and the acting. But when you, again, we watch things now with a different pair of eyes. So I'm looking for what
just
are
like
they
we
trying
talked
to
about last week, watching
Yeah.
The Matrix again. I noticed many things I didn't see before, and I've seen it 20 times.
Right? It's so different now.
Yeah.
Totally different movie. Everything's different now.
So, Carmel, are you going to be flying around the Matrix in the next 10 years?
Oh, I hope so.
Superpowers?
100%.
Awesome.
100%.
Awesome. You got to teach me those.
Oh yeah, come on. You know this. I mean, because it's funny because me and my daughters have this talk about being different, thinking different. Like we're not the 99%. So there's a term kids use called NPC. Do you know what that is?
No.
So NPC in video games is a non-playable character.
Okay.
So we look at everyone else as NPCs. So like in a video game, if you're walking around as the hero, like you interact with NPCs,
right.
You can't actually play them.
Right.
But, you might go to a little marketplace and talk to the guy. Hey, here's the bread you need, or get like your sword from another character. Right. Those are NPCs. So in the real world, like NPCs are like sheep, basically. And it's interesting because kids nowadays have a different perspective on stuff because information is just so readily available. They're not afraid of things. They don't have like the hindrances we have or the places we come from. And so talking to them about the Matrix and all that, like it makes instant sense to them, like explaining it to them that way, like, oh, okay. But then it's hard for them to disconnect because TikTok and Instagram and all this stuff is such.
Hey, talk about that correlation you made on the Matrix and come out of her.
Okay, so for all you guys who are His Advocates followers, if you're not, you need to become a VIP member immediately.
Thank you,
Kelby uses a term that's in the Bible about coming out of her.
Right.
I always thought that was a really interesting phrase, not just that Kelby uses it, but even in the Bible, but then looking at how it applies now.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I just watched The Matrix, and we always talking about getting out of the Matrix, unplugging from the Matrix. So I'm like, can I use that as a different way of saying come out of her? Well, one day I'm on a treadmill thinking about just playing on words, because as Kelby mentioned, I'm big, into words, big wordsmith, remembering that the word matrix has an archaic use in reference to the womb, or a
root word.
The root word, matrix, is matrix. So multiple
and
matriarchy. So the matrix is actually like a female, like an animal's womb.
Right.
And so I'm like, wait a minute. Coming out of her is literally like being born again, or being
born again, being rebirthed.
I'm like, oh my God. Now, the most interesting part of this whole discovery is the treadmill I was on. The company is called Matrix.
If you no way. Yeah. I forgot you told me that.
Yeah. If you work out at the LA Fitness,
bro, that's a very odd revelation.
No coincidence.
With kind of like an I dot and T cross at the very end, riding the Matrix treadmill.
Yeah,
I walking through life.
That's funny you say that, because just watched the cartoon Wall-E with my daughters this Sunday.
Yeah.
And I swear I saw it. I'm like, I know the story. It's like a little robot. If for you guys who are older, the robot looks like Johnny Five from Short Circuit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, I've never watched this cartoon. So we watched it this Sunday. It's so close to real life now than when it came out. But these people, they sit in like floating chairs. They have screens in front of them. They're all fat and out of shape. They don't walk. They don't do anything. Even the activities they do are virtual. So when they go play tennis, they're watching bots play tennis. Like, this is nuts, because this is on its way. We have people wearing VR stuff, watching people live life.
What blows my mind is all the clips that people are throwing online about coming home to their wife having virtual sex, or their husband or their kids having virtual sex. They get caught in the middle of doing the act with thin air, and they got their goggles on, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Wow. Have you seen that?
No.
It's hilarious. And then the guys that get caught throw the stuff off and keep vacuuming or something like they weren't doing anything. I don't know if it's a setup. I don't know if they're just going for viral points or whatever, but that exists. And it's going to go to next level. And that's just a whole nother dialogue and conversation with sex robots and that are absolutely alive from a standpoint of being able to communicate with, have full sexual ability, and to replace men, to replace women, and to show, I mean, can you imagine, and no offense to any woman right now, but coming home, your dinner's done, everything's dialed in, the house is kept. And I'm not saying that is a woman's job, Carmel, or anybody that's listening, but can you imagine that? And then the nightcap or whatever is you being taken care of. And that's the future. And how is that going to look for us as a society and for generations to come? They're already trying to bring about in my opinion, a depopulation to this world. And it's very much in the gay agenda movement, in the in what's going on with the V and all of these things. It's like, holy smokes. A doctor just came forward, and I can't even say it because we're live right now. But they're coming forward and talking about infertility issues and stuff that are happening as of late. And that's a big deal. And I don't know where that's coming from or how that's coming, but
you know that there was, so I had a conversation with a friend of mine who now will not eat corn because of it. But there have been studies that show that high fructose corn syrup causes infertility in rats and frogs and some other animals. And that's probably one of the most prominent ingredients in all of our food.
Everything.
So this notion of depopulation, again, when you tell people this stuff, they just look at you crazy, but like, this stuff's been written. And going back to something you said earlier, you said there was a phrase that you weren't aware of. That
somebody said it's called and they're typing on YouTube. They said it's predictive programming. That's not what I meant, but yeah, that's one of them.
I think the phrase you're talking about is karmic retribution. So basically,
retribution. I don't know, but that could apply.
It's the idea that if I say what I'm going to do, I'm not held responsible for the actions.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if that's actually the definition, and that's probably the coin word that I was looking for. Bottom line, Carmel, it's kind of scary with what they're putting out.
Well, it is very scary, and it's scary. And at the same time, like, again, because we have eyes to see these things and we're paying attention, like we kind of know what to expect. We have like security in that we've taken some, steps to be not in the middle of it when it happens. But like, again, it's not like they're not hiding it. Like, we watch movies like The Purge, we saw in 2012 with the Olympics, we talked about this the other day, the Olympics, how they had a whole opening ceremony that basically was them describing and showing COVID.
Or some type of an event that was going to put people in hospitals, make people sick, and brought out the Grim Reaper that was 100+ feet tall. It was pretty eerie.
Very eerie.
2012 Olympics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they show it and they say it, hey, here's what's going to happen, they can't be responsible for, us as sheep not understanding. And
what we need to do is we need to watch, and it's going to be a 3 or 4 hour episode, but we need to watch live The Matrix. Go live, watch it, and then just break it down. We really need to break it down, all the different thoughts that could come with each part and what they're trying to talk about, because literally we're being used as energy today. And we shifted. It shifted being, let me give an example of energy. The number one money-making bad guy operation is child trafficking in the world. It's no longer drug trafficking, it's child trafficking. The element of the product being drugs coming over the border, no, it's children coming over the border now, or children leaving the border. That is the number one most valued element in the world for bad guys. Now, it's because, Carmel, there's a market for the 500 in this nation, for people that don't know, and I disclose this a lot, 450,000 people a year disappear in this nation. They're not recovered. They disappear in this nation every year. I'm not saying that some of them are not recovered. The great vast majority are not recovered. Now that can go back to all kinds of stuff that you have heard about, like the garden plot plan, like the treaties between us and outside races, outside of our realm races, where we were trading technology and information, which it kind of makes sense with human beings for testing.
Yeah.
And now that's they're asking for more, and it's because this is a race that deals in blood and deals in these satanic or rituals but 450,000 people disappear in this nation every year. And I sit on that topic, and I think about how many people, what is making that the number one, like drug use is making drugs the number one or number two most dealt thing in the world from a criminal standpoint. What is making children? Well, it's their blood, it's their adrenochrome, it's sex, it's exploitation, it's
and again,
slavery.
They're putting it out there.
They're estimating, Carmel, 50 to 60 million slaves exist in this world today.
I've always, and it's always kind of ironic, or not ironic, is it coincidental, or either way, I don't know what the word is, that the land of the free is most responsible for the most slaves in the world.
It's not just that. And I
mean, not only in our prison system, but whether it's child trafficking, whether it's sex slaves, it's America is by far, we have more slaves in this world than any country combined, all of them.
And that ties to a whole nother conversation. That ties to DUMBs, that ties to cities that are underground that we have no idea exist, or that we do, but we don't know where, how extensive they are, how many of the people that are disappearing from up here are populating down there. Carmel, you're standing in a room of 25, 30 people. If one person falls out, you're never going to see them again. You're never going to hear about them again. And they just disappear off the face of the earth. Unless you were really close friends with them, you're not going to miss it.
No. And this happens daily. I mean, speaking about, like, again, karmic retribution, they put this stuff out there. We've seen it. We've heard it. I don't know. Do you remember the video or Sandra Bullock was being interviewed by Ellen, and Ellen asks her about her skincare routine? Do you remember this story?
Yes. And she talked about children's
blood. They have like this kind of facial thing. They inject blood into her skin, and then Ellen's pushing her to explain where they get this from. And she says,
right,
I think kids. And then Ellen goes, yeah, foreskins of babies. And like, she's like, just yells it out. And I'm like,
can you believe, full disclosure like that? What was Ellen's ankle bracelet about? You remember that?
Mm-mm.
Well, you remember when COVID first hit, there was a bunch of, like, we were trying to figure out why all these stars were missing. Like Tom Hanks fell off the face of the earth. I don't know if his social media is now back up, but there was, for like a whole year, he did no posting. Everybody said he was arrested. They said he was this, he was that. So I don't know, but like, what was it? Because there was multiple stars that were supposedly arrested. And Ellen was wearing an ankle bracelet on her show, and you could obviously see it. She wasn't hiding it. I mean, it was underneath the sock, but we don't know what it was for.
Oh, I remember you talking about her being on house arrest.
Yeah, what was that for? Did she beat up her wife? Portia?
I don't know. Ellen's an interesting character.
I heard she's a witch to work for.
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess we jumped off, but I gotta bring it up. So, speaking of Ellen, two people very close to her died within like months of each other, and I rarely saw or heard any connection to it. One was her ex, I think she was married to her, Anne Heche. And then one was her DJ, Twitch.
Did you see Anne Heche being pulled out from wherever the burning fire? And then they're putting her into the back of the ambulance. She does a full sit up, and like, that's not a dead woman.
So I remember live when that happened. I was at my mom's. She was making coffee, and I'm watching because she crashed into some house.
Right.
And then they pull her out, and then she's sitting up, and she looks like she's like doing something,
fighting them,
right? And then hours later, she dies of brain damage. So I'm like, wait a minute. If someone has brain damage, they're not sitting up. Wow. If you're pulled from a car and your brain is that damaged where you die a few hours later, you're not sitting up yelling and saying a thing. And then
what was that about?
I mean,
we don't know. We'll never know.
I'm just asking the question.
Yeah.
You know? Because then
most people don't know that. Most people, because that was shut up. Most people don't know.
It was shut up quick. I'm glad I saw it live. And then when I heard Twitch committed suicide, I'm like, really?
Who's Twitch? I don't know anything about Twitch.
Twitch was a DJ and he was a dancer. He was a DJ for Ellen for years, and he became like a close friend of hers. And he allegedly committed suicide about 2-3 months ago. And I'm like, okay, not saying that people can't have mental issues, but he never, no history of it previously. And the word was he has booked a hotel 10 minutes from his house, and that's where he committed suicide. I'm like, that's really kind of weird. Like, who drives around the corner to commit suicide, books a hotel? And it's easy to say that happened and no one can really check. And then, like, that's it.
So going back to the AI thing, you could have all these major level movie stars disappear. They can be dying of anything. Then they could be dying of that new #1 unknown cause of death. They could be, and AI can download and recreate them creating movies.
Sure.
And AI right now, this is what we're freaked out about. AI can literally take the stars that we're looking for and create a movie, and based on a screenplay, and produce the movie within hours. And that to me blows my mind. Where are we going with that? Like, how you can go infinite numbers of ways of benefits to society with this, and you can go infinite numbers of ways to being a detriment to society. And it scares the crap out of me, actually, to think that they have that much control. That's like saying Trump could die right now, or with all the Trumpers out there, he could be dead already, and more than likely, unless you know him personally and you can take a phone call from him or see him in his flesh, you don't know any different. And that goes to another element of who's in office. You look at the old pin and, hey, look, this isn't a conspiracy, and I'm not saying anything.
Well, we're just asking questions.
But now listen to me. I was in Washington, D.C., and I was spotted by somebody. It was a brother who he had a mask on, and he said, excuse me, and I was, it was like a Trader Joe's type store, and I said, I don't work here, brother. But I didn't have a mask on, and I was the only guy in the store without a mask. And he says, no, you're on YouTube, your name is Kelby. And I go, yeah. And I go, how you doing? Anyway, so this guy, we take pictures, meet, talk, and we started talking about one of his best friends was Secret Service for Biden and Obama. And he said, and he brought this up, he said, my best friend is Secret Service, was Secret Service for Biden and Obama, said whoever's in office today is not Biden. And so you look at the pictures of Biden where he has this full earlobe and a different feature, different look, different sound, and you got a new Biden today with an attached earlobe. Now, I suppose you can have a pulled face, you can have all these things, but anyway. Yeah.
I mean, it's
the point I'm trying to make. We have so many technologies coming up that we don't know the truth from fiction.
You remember when
Watching it
deepfake
online.
first came out? Do you remember? You've heard of deepfake?
Yeah.
So if you take deepfake and you take some of these AIs, now I saw some DJ in Europe used AI to recreate Eminem's voice. It wasn't Eminem, and
Right.
I'm like, okay,
Keep talking. I got to turn off this heater. Go for it.
yeah, if I have deepfake to recreate, the facial structure, and you can't tell the difference, then I have AI changing the voice. Yeah, you really don't know what's going to come on. You don't know who's out there, and that's why I always tell people, like, don't get caught up in what you see on video. Video could be anything, could be anybody. Like what is this thing messaging? Whatever's coming forth, what is it trying to tell you? Don't take it for
Right.
gospel, because you don't know what you're looking at. You have no idea, no clue.
Right. And that's I saw that back in 08, where they took Obama and took a bunch of pictures of his voice, and AI recreated a full dialogue where Obama was giving a speech on television, and you couldn't tell the difference of it being a computer generated AI speech versus Obama himself. And that blew my mind. And that was, Carmela, was 15 years ago, which means they've had this technology long before that.
Yeah.
When they start producing something live like that for people so that they can watch, it's the same thing as them making the birds drop out of the sky in Arkansas way back in 2010, I think it was, and 2011, both on New Year's Day. 50,000 of the same species of birds fell out of the sky. 365 days later, another 10,000 birds, New Year's Day, same species, same area, fell out of the sky instantaneously. And what they were doing is showing people they have the ability, based on DNA, to kill a species within a region, and just fell out of the sky. And so that's what they're doing. They're showcasing their technologies live for people for purchase reasons. And in my opinion, and also to help people to understand the power of what they have. Now, look, if that's what they're doing with that, they're doing the same with the technologies for UFOs. They're doing the same with technologies for, everything. So it's like, we have no idea how far advanced we are from a covert operational standpoint. We have no idea.
No,
I do know we have suits that make soldiers disappear and blend in, not just camouflage, but are literally suits made of nanoparticulate mirrors and cameras that reflect the other side of the suit. So as you're walking through, you barely can see the image walk past you. You're looking at an invisible cloak.
interesting. So there's another term in movie making about showing you something. Okay, forget it. I don't know what the term is, but do you remember seeing that in a movie? Probably. Oh, this movie came out maybe 25 years ago, where something could walk through the forest and you couldn't see it, just
Right.
like you described it. Predator.
Oh yeah. Holy
So
snap.
again, they
Predator.
that was a long time ago. I mean, been 30 years ago.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Arnold movies. But this thing literally just did the same thing. Reflective technology. His scales would turn to mirrors and you couldn't see it.
Huh. I never really thought about that. I was actually at the not that it matters, but I went to the restaurant where they filmed in Puerto Vallarta, that whole jungle scene, and where they left the helicopter, and the movie set didn't want to bring home the helicopter. They left the helicopter, and this restaurant was built around the helicopter. So you got to be a part of the movie Predator and kind of live in that jungle and see the different pictures. And it was neat.
Wow.
It was neat. No, but they are in fact just promoting, Carmel, these different bits of technologies, and I think some of them are to cause fear. What you're looking at is, and we can't even discuss the things that are really important right now because of fear being pulled off of this network or any other network. But
right. And that's
where do you want to go with this today?
I mean, so look, when you talk about, you made a good point about it can be destructive, it can be used for evil, or it can be used for good. So my thing is like, I always want to take the same power that's being used for evil and use it for good. How is that possible? How can we do those things?
It is possible, but the question is this machine designed? You look at the different movies that are being played, these and look at what these AIs are actually saying to us. They're talking about world domination. That's what they're designed for. They're talking about bringing about the beast system, and that to me is more of a reflection on a light and darkness in this world that is relating to an actual being in control, meaning a satanic being or a being like God. A whole nother subject matter. But when you look at why AI would exist, the only thing other than a limit in power that that being or those people, whatever you want to call it, they don't have omnipotence. Like if you're a god and you have omnipotence, you're able to see all things at all times. And that's theoretically a fact in the Bible for the God of the Bible. But the enemy here on this earth, or the enemy of the people of the earth, doesn't necessarily have that in full play yet. Now it kind of does, from the standpoint that it's seeing the communications, every text, every phone call, and soon every thought and car drive and where you go and what you're purchasing and how much you're purchasing and how much you actually potentially could be holding and how big your house is and the diagram of your house based on your eye vacuum, that takes pictures of the floor layout and takes pictures of you and sends it to databases. I mean, this is, and I gotta say, I have one.
You do? The Roomba? You have a Roomba?
I do. I do. I'm seriously thinking about footballing it. But that little dude goes around and cleans up all the dust and gets back and blows it out. I mean,
people don't.
Is it worth my privacy? I don't know.
So back to what you said about the powers at hand, the powers that be. So if we keep this biblical, because my stance on all that, who wins in the end?
We do.
So I'm not fearful of it like that, because I think I know I can use anything against me for my good. I can turn it around. I can change it. Like I watched a movie this weekend, Black Adam with The Rock. You seen it?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So much imagery, the symbolism. But they make a great point.
They were all doing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And did you freak out when you saw that?
Well, no, I didn't freak out. I mean, that's a given. That's going to be played out in a movie. And what is the name for? Why do they choose the Black Adam? And
because Adam was black.
And
you already know.
Carmel, we before we went live, we started throwing down some funny stuff. I asked Carmel if he could please turn on his light. His face was a little dark.
Right.
And I didn't mean it any other way than that, but Carmel turned it into a race hate thing, whatever. Anyway, so
the movie is, he says, or someone says in there, he has the power to heal and to destroy.
Yeah.
That he was that powerful. Like all of us have that ability to use things for good or for evil. So I can take AI and do great works with it. I can take deep fake, I can take Chat GPT, whatever, and use it to make great things. And you mentioned it yourself. And we've seen even in movies. There was a movie, what's his name was in it, where what's the guy? Anyway, he goes to outer space and he gets healed, or he has to heal his son. His son is dying, and he takes him up to outer space, and they have like this pod that you can set people in, and it would just heal them. They would find the source of their disease.
Yeah, those things exist right now.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Now, could I use the same technology to kill millions of people? Sure. But I'm not gonna walk around out here and be fearful of those things. I'm gonna be smart about it. That's for dang sure. But I always feel like I'm able to be used in a way to profit people. And why shouldn't I? Why should I not have the same, hubris of someone that's, you know, satanic or evil or whatever you want to call it, and that walks around and flaunts their evil power, evil being, or evil, why can't I do the same? Because I know my intent. And that's another place I've come to in my walk with God and in the Bible, Christianity, and everything like that. I don't fear questioning anything because my intent has always been good. My intent has always been to look for the better part of humanity, my own walk. I know what looks bad. I know what murder is, right? I know robbing, and I get all that stuff. So if I'm questioning the powers of that be, whether it's education or religion or government, that's who I am. Like, I'm not going to back down from anyone, because I've learned after 40 some odd years that Carmel questions things, because if I don't see it making logistical sense to me or logical sense to me, I'm going to ask questions. And when it does, great. Now, that doesn't mean I know everything, or I get to know, or I deserve to know. But if I hear my pastor saying something that's like, that's way off, I'm going to question my pastor. He's no different than me. If my president says something that's way off, I'm going to question it. He's no better than me. So that's where I'm at in terms of like questioning all things. So that's part of what this show is. We're going to question things.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with questioning stuff, including the Bible, including your pastor, including God. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's you know, we sometimes go through things, and I'm not going to try to bring this to a clock for God or what have you, but we go through things, and I've caught myself flat out crying out, and I believe in a creator. I don't believe that in self-creation, and that's not where I want to go with this, but I find myself crying out and questioning, and I questioned everything, Carmel. I've questioned how the Bible was translated. I questioned specific scriptures, why words were added, why words were taken out, and why there's things that contradict. And people want to say that the Bible doesn't contradict itself. I want to laugh at that, because my pastor told me in the very beginning, 25, 30 years ago, just hand the Bible to somebody and say, show me where. Well, I can show people where, but there's individual books that are contradicting individual books. And it's not necessarily a direct contradiction to a faith or an overall blanket statement for who Yeshua was or what have you. But the point I'm trying to make is, I have questioned everything in my life. And I'm at this point where I don't look at the believer base as being equipped for what's about to take place. And I even think that satanic realm, dark realm, esoteric realm, whatever you want to call it, has embedded idols and ideology of things within the church that is an absolute farce and lie, and steering good people down a wrong road. I think a lot of people are going to be waiting on things that are never going to happen, because they don't know how to interpret the word of God properly. And you got a pastor who thinks he does, and he maybe doesn't. But the point I'm trying to make, Carmel, is I do know the end. And I am not going to believe for 1 second that a created being has more power than a creator. I don't think that a creator, including AI, I believe AI has a button that can be turned off. Now, can AI be smarter than its master? Absolutely. Is it able to be turned off? No longer. And here's why. There's a thing called singularity. It's been in play since 2016, where they created AI, in my opinion, created these digital currency systems so it could take over the monetary system of all nations within the world. And it's a part of the mark of the beast plan. It's a part of a beast system ruling over all nations. It's a part of the mark of man, and his number is 666, taking over the world. Well, that AI structure created the blockchain, and different coins use different self-created blockchains, and there's all kinds of thought processes that can go with this. But that AI can exist now through the blockchain, through millions of computers. So you can shut it down here, but you can't take it all the way out, because it will exist and work throughout the world. The only thing that truly could take AI out is an EMP, and where the whole world is affected. And if the supercomputer is not covered with a copper shell, and you know it is. So what is it that could take an AI out? Is meaning, here's my point, Carmel, it can't be stopped. So what is that move in 10 years? It's either going to be a return of a god or of God, or it's going to be the fall of the human race, and you're going to live out the Terminator in some respects, which could look like a biblical judgment to a lot of people. And here we have these movies that are laying out what and how and why. 30 years ago, Terminator came out in 1984, something like that.
And so coming back full circle, I don't know, I think I mentioned this to you before, but evidently the person who wrote the Terminator is supposed to be the same person who wrote the Matrix.
Really?
Yeah. So it's the same Black woman who's suing the Wachowski brothers, who are now Wachowski sisters, which is another weird, interesting story.
What? Whoa.
Huh?
Are you saying those guys transgendered?
You know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
The creators of the Matrix, the two brothers, both came into themselves as women and now became women?
Yep.
Fully or just outwardly?
What do what do you mean, like in terms, like, or they actually have the change of their bodies?
Did they do the chop?
I don't know for sure, but
bro.
yeah, so Larry is now Lana.
Are you serious?
And Andy Wachowski is now Lily. You know that?
I don't even know what to say about that.
Yeah. So anyway, getting back to the story. And this has been like a myth or a rumor or whatever. Evidently, this Black woman, I forget her name, I have to look it up. She sued them for taking the story of the Matrix, but also she says she also was responsible for the Terminator. Now, what's crazy is when she talks about these stories, she says they're the same story. They're connected. And there's a video online somewhere where she talks about how the Terminator and the Matrix are in the same world. Basically, how AI created the Terminator in the past to kill Neo earlier because of what happens in the future. So when you see the Matrix and you see Mr. Smith trying to kill Neo and he can't catch up, basically saying AI decided to go back in the past, create Arnold's character to kill the kid in the movie. And if you watch the Terminators, each Terminator gets better, from Arnold's character to the one that's like the mercury, liquidy, whatever. So each version of the Terminator gets better till you see the one in the future. And they hear her describe the story such fluidity. I'm like, it sounds like she wrote
Sophia Stewart. Somebody just typed it.
Okay, thank you. Again, I don't know if she really is the creator or not, but the way she talks about the stories and when she connects the two, I'm like, wow, makes perfect sense.
So okay. Do you think she got a vision to write those stories? Do you think she had a dream? Do you think let me explain why. There's a story of trying to get water. Sorry, guys. There's a story of the lead singer of Led Zeppelin standing inside of an upside down pentagram where he would receive the downloads of his music from another being out of his own mouth. And so you listen to his song, Stairway to Heaven, and you can, I've learned how to do this where you can play them backwards. Using a Windows recording, you can take the song and you can play it backwards and play it slow. And it makes sense, because how would you be able to, like, Barack Obama, every time he created that song, yes we can, yes we can, the playing that song backwards, it's praise Satan over and over. Yes we can, yes we can. So play that song backwards, it's praise Satan. Well, here you got a lead singer talking about how he would receive music by standing within a pentagram and receiving a download of that music, and these songs all became #1 songs. And then when you play the songs backwards, they have hidden agendas, demonic agendas, talking about praising Satan, talking about the number 666, talking about all kinds of things. Play it backwards yourself. So what Carmel,
Mm-hmm.
what entity gave that download, and what entity was able to write it forwards and backwards so that singing something forwards would sound a certain way backwards? Could it be AI? I mean, AI could do that technology now, I'm sure,
Sure,
but
sure.
yeah.
So see, now it's interesting because I think people, again, and I keep saying this, but like when we talk about people using powers for evil, like if you look at a pentagram and you connect it to the Baphomet, the goat, whatever, and so let me stop there. If you saw Black Adam, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember the last scene of the movie when he sits on the throne?
Yeah.
I said this to my son as we're watching it. I said, I guarantee you he's going to make the Baphomet sign. And he does it. He literally sits down. He's sitting right here. And quickly he does this. And then he gets up and crushes the throne. But when I saw that, I'm like, okay, like everything is hidden in entertainment, whether it's music, movies, TV, or whatever. Whatever they get it from or why or how, I mean, that's like whether Led Zeppelin did it through evil means or for evil means or whatever, whether it's AI in the past, it's all cyclical, right? Like we're not.
Do you believe in spirits?
Depends on what we're talking about. Are we talking about
Do
like
you believe you're a spirit, or are you physical?
me? We talking about the person that's inside of this body?
I'm talking about, do you have a soul that is a spirit that is outside of the carcass, or
Sure.
do you believe in that?
Yes, 100%.
So then you would believe that there could be a demonic realm that had demons or a set of spirits that was anti your well-being.
As much as I would believe there's spirits that have my well-being as a priority.
Okay. Where do those come from? Yeah. Okay.
No, we don't know. There's stories about it. There's stories about angels and demons. There's stories about, heaven and hell. There's stories. It's all duality. That's the thing about it. It's all duality.
Here's a reality check for a lot of believers that they never get, like the Christian community. And I'm going to shake it up a bit right now.
Careful.
The word hell does not exist in the Old Testament.
Speak on it.
Well, I can go on, but we don't want to go there right now. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying what we're being taught is not in the Old Testament. And people go to Gehenna and Sheol, and that's not hell. It's not what is talked about in the New Testament being hell. And so that's a whole nother diagram of thoughts that you can do with why. Why isn't it there? Why is it only spoken about inside of the New Testament? Not just that, but what Yeshua was saying, Jesus was saying about the burning and about the fire. And here's a whole nother thing, and this will blow people's mind. I'm not trying to take away from the church today, but the word forever or eternity does not exist in the Greek. So why are we equating the New Testament? Why is it equating hell to be burning forever and ever, or to be punished forever and ever, when that word does not exist in the Greek? And so when you start studying some of those things, it calls into question not so much the Bible, but the church translation of the Bible.
That's the thing. That's the thing I always get at, is our translation. Like, what's the one? Oh, like there's 4 types of love, right? There's storge, eros, phileo, and agape.
Okay.
Always heard that agape meant unconditional. It does not mean that. And we always, well, God's love is unconditional. No, if you read the Bible, there are several conditions God gives Israel, God gives his people, God's give, hey, if you do this, will I not do that? That's a condition. But we always get this idea from the pastor that God's love is unconditional, like the way you love your kids. I get what you're saying, but that's not the same thing. And we get taught these theologies that aren't true.
Here's another one, and it's again a pastor's fault or pastor's fault. The Bible does in fact say that God hates the sinner, not the sin, but we're taught God hates the sin, but not the sinner. But you look at the Old Testament, and here's the contradiction. Here's the contradiction of contradictions. And this has to be taken, because anybody I bring this up to twists it so hardcore, and they try to hang on to their old ideologies of thoughts that they don't want to even be confronted with something new. But in the Old Testament, you can find a dozen spots where it talks about how God hates the sinner, abhors the sinner, hates the sinner. It's clear. It's not unclear. It's clear. But then you have Yeshua, who comes to the earth, and he corrects the record, and he talks about just his very existence is an expression of love for the sinner. He talks about having hate in your heart is murder, correcting the record of a commandment. He talks about that. My whole point is, it was whether people want to believe it or not, it's a contradiction to the Old Testament, and it's his story being fulfilled. It's almost like God said, you know what, you guys, I get it, you're prophetic, you're nailing it for me, but you're just not clearing up my heart for the people. And it's like, and so it kind of blows my mind, but I think we should this is a topic that's a very sensitive topic to a lot of people. I mean, very sensitive. But his whole thing was, Christ said to people, how can you're saying you're a believer, but you can't love your enemies? Really? So is a sinner God's enemy? Theoretically. Christ is contradicting God's heart? No. God sent, and so this is the story that I believe, that his son, and it's to literally fulfill the Old Testament prophecies of 306 different ways. And that's the funny thing, and this is a whole nother dialogue, and I don't want to get into it right now, Carmel, because the time that we have, but I will if you want. I'm not afraid of you at all. And 306 prophecies pointing back to the birth, death, and resurrection. And then this guy comes and he simply just crushes the Old Testament ideologies of hatred towards a sinner, because the very expression of the 8th covenant, by God himself offering up his son, is unequivocal love for the sinner.
So, bringing this back around to our AI and our deep fake and all that stuff, what's stopping the powers that be from, because we see aliens are about to enter our atmosphere.
They have been for a long time, but they're actually being talked about now. You're right. Yeah.
So what's the plausibility of the return of Christ and the rapture happening through generated means?
Okay, so 100%. I'm with you.
So,
Number
like,
one,
because
number
again,
one,
if a third of our population disappears,
right. And number one, the word rapture does not exist in the word of God. Number two, it's a theory, yeah, at best. And it's based on a few New Testament scriptures. And I've studied this in depth. I'm not saying that we don't go to heaven. We are not brought up into heaven, but this element of a pre-tribulation rapture is BS, in my opinion. It's just total BS, because the second that doesn't happen and then tribulation hits, every Christian is going to run from their God, because they're not going to believe in what their pastor says anymore, because their pastor in fact lied to them or tried to give them hope where hope doesn't lay. And so it could be a mid, it could be a late trib, it could be never. We don't necessarily understand, the terms of Second Thessalonians, where he was taken out of the way, and how God promises that he would never leave us or forsake us. The point I'm trying to make is, I think it's all in the last 150 years. You look at the movie Left Behind, that book series was created by a 32nd degree Freemason, and it's now published by mainstream modern Christianity as being, you're going to be left behind. So what you're saying is there's going to be a block of people, a third of the world, that's going to leave, and it's not going to be the Christians. And that could be any number of ways, Carmel. That could be because of things that have already transpired in the last 3 years. It could be because it could be a form of a plague in which they're seized up, and for reasons. It could be any number of things. I never thought it would play out like it did in the last 3 years. I think whoever's in charge of this is extremely smart.
I've been saying whoever wrote this COVID script is a genius. They're
genius.
They have done an excellent job with it, because it's got all the right elements for.
I should have invested in plexiglass, bro.
Well, I don't know if plexiglass stops zombies though.
Oh, is that coming?
Zombies, of course.
It's biblical.
It's in the scripture.
It's in the script. Sure. I like how you played that word right there. That was good. That's
what I do.
Alluding to the fact that it's a script.
I'm just saying.
It could be a script. It could be the script of his story. Roll that whole beast back on top of its head, didn't I?
You're gonna get feminists all pissed off.
Really? That's like a desirable goal,
right?
So the two brothers, dude, you just blew my mind, from the Matrix, are now women.
Yeah.
How do you think Keanu feels about that? I'll be honest. Keanu, do you think Keanu's now struggling with his manhood?
The vibes I've always got from him is, he's a pretty stable dude.
Is he gay?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Oh, he is.
Is he?
Oh, yeah.
Why do you say it's with such conviction?
You know who I know.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah.
That's
yeah. It's all good. It's all good. And he pretends to date this older lady who's actually his friend, and they go everywhere together. It's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, she's much older than him.
In all honesty, he is a nice guy.
That's the vibe I've always gotten
and
seen. Again,
I don't care if he's gay. He read the book. There's these books that anyway, I'm not going to go down that road. He's go ahead. It's interesting seeing this. Look, if he's gay, it just means more for dudes who aren't. Whatever. That's cool. But I've always gotten the vibe that he was a normal cat, down to earth. Like him and Jim Carrey, some other guys seem, I don't use the term woke or whatever, but they seem like they kind of understand what's going on. They have an idea about Hollywood and the place they're in, the place they have. And Jim Carrey's played in some interesting movies that have highlighted some things we could talk about. 24 or 23, whatever that is.
And Truman Show.
Truman Show was big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can do predictive programming for several episodes. There's we should definitely watch The Matrix and break it down live. Maybe some other movies.
That'd be a long episode, dude. We might be there 6-7 hours just talking that through.
Probably.
Because there's things, or you know, the other one is we should do is Wizard of Oz.
Ooh.
I watched the Wizard of Oz just 20 minutes and I had to shut it down. I was so blown away like 2 months ago. I was so blown away by the eyes that I have now and what I was seeing and the you know what was being introduced. It just completely makes me think, who the heck wrote that movie? Like, how did they know all that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that presentation of courage and the Tin Man and the Straw Man and Dorothy and the, you know, it just blew my mind, all the correlations that all that makes. Somebody just made a comment that the Hebrew meaning of the Lord capitalized this way means Baal.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so hold on a sec.
Yes, it does.
I didn't know this, so I need somebody to give me a video link, put it in there, please, showing me that. But here's another one that blew my mind. Check this out.
Mm.
What is the name of the Muslim god?
Allah.
Okay, so if you take the Hebrew name for God, Jehovah,
Mm-hmm.
in Hebrew and or in Arabic, and you smash it together, you turn it around and flip it upside down, it spells Allah.
Oh, because the way it's, yeah, I could see that.
So you well, and what people don't know is that you're a closet Muslim who's speaking Arabic because you had a girlfriend that was part Arabic and you wanted to show off to her. So you were learning Arabic for several years and
Oh
you
my
kind of
God.
fell into that faith and got down a little. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, isn't that amazing?
No, that's
Like what kind of a entity? Hey, let's smash it up, turn it. Allah, that's our God.
it's all in. I mean, again, and with we're talking about the Abrahamic religions, they're also interconnected, interwoven. They have the meanings of things are so like, and again, this connects to some of the Messianic stuff. If you ask some people, Allah is a acronym:
Or
arms, legs, arm, head. It's a pentagram.
holy crap.
I've
Wow.
seen this in several books. I've seen it in a lot of like secret society scripture, doctrine, or whatever. But basically, if you write in, you show a human with their arms and legs stretched out.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. Again, and I take
That's a little
everything
bit
I
of a
read
reach,
with
but
a grain
that's
of
interesting.
salt, but it's very, very fascinating. Like, okay, that's
Yeah. So
it's
could that, I mean, and it's like
but
the
like back to the person who mentioned Baal. Like I remember reading that before and looking at the Hebrew. This is where I had my whole epiphany revelation in church, was watching our pastor talk about stuff, going into my own study, whether it's Greek concordance or whatever, and then seeing the word that's in the book, not the same as the one he was saying. Like the word sky in Greek was Uranos or Uranos, which is Uranus, which is an actual Greek god. It wasn't heaven, it wasn't the sky. I'm like, wait, that's different than the sky he's saying, or like agape or whatever. You look up Lord and you see Baal or Baal, and we're taught that Baal was this evil god along with Moloch and these other ones they burn babies to. You're like, wait a minute, it's the same word where you're saying Lord in the Old Testament. So who was he actually talking to? Now, of course, a Christian will say, oh, it's out of context. It's not the same person. They use it differently, yada, yada. You got to be consistent. You can't go 1 minute it's this, you take the Bible literal, and the next minute it's allegory and, it's out of context and context, whatever. And again, it's not one book. That's the other thing people keep thinking about the Bible, that it's one book. It's several books written by several different people. It's not one book. That's why it can contradict itself, because it's different people writing it, different stories. And we have books that are missing, like, Book of Thomas, the Maccabees, and Bell and the Dragon, or whatever. Like, where are these books at? Why do they take them out?
well, there's a book that's talked about within the Bible that was taken out, and that is the Enoch. And that's a very surprising book. And I've actually never really gone through it, but I've done studies of people that have done studies on the book, meaning I read their study, their outline, their notes, and I'm kind of blown away by what's in that book and what was left out, quote unquote, of the Bible, and why was that pulled out versus, and then you had the Apocrypha, which is pulled out of every mainstream Bible that's in the Catholic Bible today. And people are left with a big fat, I don't know what to believe. And so when I feel that way, and I know everybody does, what I do is, and Carmel, this is just for me, what I did is I looked at the prophetic. And I looked at the facts of what was actually written about. Could that be an actual prophetic thing happening within the Bible? And did it actually happen at a certain time, date, and place in the future? And so I can't get around the prophetic at being something that did take place pre-Christ, written about before Christ, that was fulfilled in some time in the future after the book was written. Like, we've been able to carbon date the scrolls back as long as 295 years before Christ was born. Not the New Testament stuff, but the Old Testament stuff. And so you have scrolls indicating 306 prophecies that have been dated back to before Christ was born and now fulfilled by that life, that birth, death, and resurrection. So my point I'm trying to make is, I don't care really how I've been taught. I thank God I was taught the way I was taught, by whom I was taught. It taught me a lot. Nobody has it right, Carmel. There's very few people, and I think God is going to go, in my opinion, that it's still many things are going to be taking place that we weren't expecting, because both sides are still at war. But yes, I do know who wins in the end, and I do believe in the general context of what was delivered by prophetics, because it's come true. Now, that if you get that and you believe that one thing, you have to take, for example, the prophetic about and I don't like calling it the end of days or the coming of time. But we are very much walking towards a new world order. Whether you believe a Bible or not, the Bible doesn't talk about a new world order in those words, but it does talk about a one world government. But we are walking towards a new world order, a cashless society, and where you will be, and this is what they're saying, like Yuval Harari, he is considered the prophet for the WHO, for the Bill Gates, for the major world and economic leaders, like the one that gets everybody in debt. I'm forgetting their name. But this guy is talking about the implanted chip. And he also talks about, and it blows my mind, Carmel, he talks about all the useless eaters in so many words, what they've been saying forever, like the people that are worthless. And these are his words. These aren't my words. And like, what are we going to do with these people? Like, how are we going to feed them? And so they're developing food that is not meat, that is not nutritious, that is not healthy. Vaccines are developing all these things, and the outcome and byproduct of that in a large effect at some point in the future is going to dramatically affect these people. In my opinion, could be an adverse effect, and that's what they're going to do with those people. But we're looking at a rollout in a biblical fashion. Script, okay, but
to your point, it's happening. So whether or not a person believes the Bible is the Bible, or has different things are happening that are mentioned in the Bible. So it's like, if you know the script, act accordingly, regardless of how you feel about it. Like, if you want to be a hyper spiritual Christian about it, or you want to be a person that's just like, I like to know what's going on, I read the news, you probably should read the Bible. You should probably understand it. And all the stuff you're talking about, you see it daily, where there's, I just watched this video talking about RCC Christian. Are you familiar with that name? He's the guy who funded the building of the Georgia Guidestones. You know those, all right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recently
So
taken down.
recently taken down. So these things have been up since I think the 80s, talking about, keeping a population at 500 million. All this stuff's gone down. All of a sudden they tear up their script. Like, okay, that usually means something's about
that. It means it's been something that has since been fulfilled in their mind because of the actions of what they've done in the last few years. It could be the overall effect with what we're seeing medically, physically, and I gotta be very loose with what I'm saying right now, but and we got to be very actually tight with what we're saying right now because of the dramatic effect of getting a strike in this channel for even bringing up these words. So Carmel, we know that AI could, because the enemy is finite, whether he's a man or he's Satan or he's finite. He's got an end, he's got a beginning. He's not able to do the things that he needs to do to understand who his enemies are on a worldwide basis. The first thing that AI attacked, and it was AI in California, was keeping them in their house. You're not allowed to go to church, but you can go to the bar. You can go to the sex shop. You can go to whatever. But you couldn't go to the gym, you couldn't go to the beach, and you couldn't go to church, and you for sure couldn't sing. Now, isn't that interesting? Like, and here's one of the questions that they asked AI after reading all the data from all the internet, who won the elections in the last presidential campaign, and the AI came back and said it was Donald Trump. After looking at all the data, AI gave the answer. And wow. What else is it able to look at and assist this demonic stronghold, this secret societies or secret society, or the Pacers? Most, it's interesting, Carmel, is most people don't even understand who the Pacers are.
Don't even go there. You don't have time.
Yeah, we don't have time. So
that's a big one.
And it's a dangerous one. And so when you start to think in the line of men, like, what would they need? They would need to know who their enemies are. And in this day and age, you really don't know who your enemies are unless you can listen to every call, every text, and then you can get a correlation and an idea. So program this AI to determine who your enemies are, who's speaking about the gospel, who is singing at church, who's telling people about freedom, who is telling this. And these database engines are putting the data necessarily together for them to be able to make attacks.
The two things the
enemy coming.
Needs, the two things the enemy needs. The first one you mentioned was information. The second one, and I'll end it on this, is consent.
Bro, that is so big, and thank you for bringing that up. A lot of people don't get what you just said. A lot of people don't understand consent, and they don't get that there is jurisdictional positions that you can be in on this earth that don't allow them to have autonomy over you. It's just the simple understanding, and maybe this is an episode we need to do, of being a corporate employee versus being a self-governed man. And those are simplistic in nature, but it's very difficult to accept that you would be considered out of their jurisdiction, and therefore they would not be able to make a march upon you. And I wholly believe that. And there's many reasons biblically, but there's even more reasons in law that point to that as being a truth for the people, that their consent is everything. It's no different, Carmel, than remember those pictures of the videos of them getting on the trains, 30,000 people getting on the trains, the Jews in the 40s with 5 armed guards. They were forcing 40,000 people. All they had to do was turn towards them, crush them, make the conductor drive them back home, and they could have done a whole different thing. Instead they went all the way to their death. and without food and without shelter and without clothing at the very end. They lost their bags at the first stop. At the second stop, they lost their integrity. They weren't getting food. They weren't getting anything. And long story short, consent.
Yeah, I think we should end it on that one, because we can come back and talk about that a whole nother day, but that's big.
It is big. So we've been on about 80 minutes, Carmel. Any closing comments? Because, we could do this for a couple hours, maybe 2 or 3 times a week.
I'm down.
All right.
Yeah. Until
We
next
should
time.
set something up so people know when, though.
Yeah. Make it like a regular thing so people.
Hey, this is only our second show. We did no marketing and we got 8 people on right now.
Okay.
I feel empowered.
What's up, 8 folks?
What's up, 8 folks? It's going to come down. This will be a big thing, just because we're talking about the things that people really are not getting clarity on. And I think we need to be able to make clarity.
100%. And
just on like what we're saying, I believe we win in the end, and I believe you believe that. And that's an important thing. We don't think too far separate from each other, but I think we need to base that on by preconditioned, pre-subscribed consent to certain things over ourselves, our property, our land, our children. It's something that is super important, and I think that's how we win this battle.
I'm with it. All right, bro.
Anything to close out with?
Go to hisadvocates.org and sign up.
Dude, that is a sweet, kind comment. Anything you want to plug? When are you going to go live so we can actually get down and watch you live again?
Yeah, when I have a show, man, I'll plug them all day here. That's for sure.
You're funny.
Thank you. I'm glad you actually said that on air so we can record it. The next time you tell someone I'm not.
Dude, I don't mind that you can be funny and be a hater too.
Okay.
All right, bro. Have a good one, man. Good to see you. See you next.